I'll show you the next layer. Okay, so the baby has had its first baking, and that was just a thin layer of flesh. So now we're going to put on some veins. And since this person really didn't want an over amount of that type of stuff, we're not going to put a lot on, but we are going to put some on. And this is vein blue. Blue is a very staining color, so you really want to go light with the blue. And this one you want to make sure you get the excess off. So I'm going to have a sponge brush or a sponge so I can tap it on there to get the excess off before I start. So with babies, now this one is not a brand new baby. I mean, it's not like a newborn. You think about what the actual coloring and stuff is going to be. And you think about where veins naturally are. Veins typically are where the skin is thinner. So you're thinking up here at the forehead, the temple area, around in the back is where typically you see veins. And you can look at yourself and you don't have as much fat on the back of your hand, so your veins pop up easy to see, whereas your forearm has more and you don't typically see them as easily. So it's the same thing with the baby. You put veins on the hands and on the underside of the wrist, maybe in the thumb pad here, but you're not going to have veining in this upper arm area because you don't typically see it unless you're kind of over detailing. Maybe you're doing a monster baby or something. So I try to visualize where it looks like a natural vein would fall just by the sculpt of how the kit is. And with a light touch,
out of here. I know I'm building. It takes you like an hour to get out of here.
and you have to just look at veins and see how they squiggle around.
Oh God,
And you just tap it a little bit. I don't know how well. Yeah, that showed up. There's the first vein. And you want the ends to be a little bit lighter so it really looks like it just kind of fades out into the skin.
I'm very paranoid right now. Yeah, this is when you. That hole, at least I knew it was safe. No monster. I'm gonna build two of them. Oh my God. I'm 6.
Now, if you don't like this, you have not baked it. So you can remove it. Like, say I didn't want this little edge here. If you wipe kind of hard while it's still moist, it'll completely come off. Until you have baked it, you can remove any mistakes that you see. So when you start getting into the process of actually putting down some layers other than flesh, you want to pay close attention to make sure it's how you want it to look before you bake it. And if you got a spot that's too dark, you want to remove it. If you got a spot that's too light, you might want to go back over it. So I believe that's all that I'm going to put on this baby's head. because we don't want to go over too much, because that's not what this person wanted on their doll. Just kind of going across it again, make it a little bit darker. Okay, so now moving on to the arms. We'll start with the top. I'm just going to put a little bit in here. And you don't want these to be so thin that you can't see them either. That's not... Yes, babies have smaller veins, but they're not small like a capillary, which is your red little veins, and we'll put some of them on later. I don't know if that's going to show up. You want these to be really light unless you are making, you know, a fantasy baby. Then you would want it darker. Or if you had a preemie, they would tend to be a little darker because the skin is thinner. And veins, they just roll in crazy directions. And I like to put veinings around the ankles. That's another thin area. And then they typically go up about the back of the leg. You want the veins to come down on this layer or soon after, because when you put all of your other layers on, it's going to make this look like it's actually under the skin and not sitting on top. Some people do veins the very first layer. Okay, that should show up. There we go. So that's it for that one. Keep on moving here.
I can't get lost in my mind. It's virtually impossible. In my total, I think it's virtually impossible to get lost. Yeah, so if you think about it.
Okay, that's all we're gonna do. And of course, you could put some veins on top of the foot. This one's so wrinkled though. I don't want to do too much here because it'll get down in those creases.
So we're going to use our current system. Are we going to do like a barter system, or are we going to do the current system?
I'm kind of working in around.
My next one's going to have a currency. I don't know what it's going to be yet. Paper. We're going to use paper. You can trade paper. It's like money in a way.
Total nail power game.
Alright, and then the last one here.
When it first hits those diamonds, I was like,
Might as well keep going there.
Has anyone bought an alchemy stand yet? Alchemy stand.
You tell me what I need, I'm gonna do it.
You need another, like, rod or something. And you have to get this from places.
Alright.
I have some sand at my house. Wait, you need sand? I know where to get that.
Do a little bit more here on the top.
What's the pay,
It's
Jake?
like half desert.
You can kind of go back later and highlight this a little bit more if it starts to get lost in your coloring. I'm just double checking.
Now put it down.
Maybe go over it a little bit more in places that I think look a little lighter. Sometimes I think as it dries, it'll lighten up
Two-person.
because it's soaking into the vinyl. So sometimes you'll put a layer on, you think it looks kind of dark, you take it back out of the oven and it has lightened up. So that is for that. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to put it in the new wave oven. Same thing as the first layer. And then I'll show you the next layer.